Odd Conduit Media.
What's it gonna be?
You are now listening to the
Hey everyone, and welcome to a special episode of
Hyrule Podcaster!
I'm your co-host Ben,
And I'm your co-host Pat.
and today we're bringing you a special engagement. Get what I did there? Get what I did there? A special engagement with our friends from the First Encounter podcast, Chris and Haney. Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Hello.
Good. How are you two doing?
Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing great.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course, thanks for being a part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. We're stoked to have you here.
So for people who don't usually listen to our podcast, we usually play Zelda games. It's an audio-only Let's Play experience. The first two seasons were the NES and the SNES. We're moving on to the next system. We'll actually get to that at some point today.
Yeah, a little later.
But right now we're just kicking it and doing a little chatting.
We're in an in-betweener right now and thought it would be really fun to bring you another interview with someone that's kind of tangentially related to the podcast that we think you might have a lot of fun hearing from. And we hope you check out their podcast. Everything about their podcast will be in the show notes as well. But Chris, why don't you say hi and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chris, First Encounter number 1, and we started First Encounter because Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time, and Henny had never played it before. I wanted to share his first experience with the world, and now here we are, 2 years later, Season 1 done.
Nice.
Henny beat Final Fantasy VII, and now I'm playing Majora's Mask for the first time, blind.
Cool. How you liking Majora's Mask?
It's super good, having a blast with it. It's a little strange because it's for podcasts, and I have to keep progressing the story somewhat, but I really just want to run around Clocktown all day.
Just keep resetting time and just start all over again.
No problem at all. Really just crushing the game. Running around Clocktown, solving problems left and right. The moon is plummeting to Earth, and that might come up later, but it's okay. It's all good.
That's awesome. It's such a good game.
And then do you want to say hello and let us know a little about yourself, Haney?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am part 2 of First Encounter. My name is Hanny. In Season 1, I was the fresh-faced young lad who was playing a video game for the first time. Chris had me playing Final Fantasy VII for my very first time. And then for our newest season, which started a couple weeks ago, we are swapping that around a little bit. And like Chris mentioned, he's playing Majora's Mask for the first time. And Majora's Mask was one of my favorite games growing up. I'm a big Zelda fan. Chris has never been a huge Zelda person. So
Excuse me?
yeah. So it just seemed like a very, very fun, very different but similar next step after finishing out Final Fantasy VII. Just swapping over to another childhood favorite that slipped one of us by. So that's kind of how we landed on Majora's Mask, and for me it's been very fun just watching Chris experience the wildness of that game for the very first time.
Yeah, it is wild.
It is a wild game.
That's such a fun format. How'd you come up with the idea?
Chris, go for it.
So at my last job, I was data entry folk. So I was typing away at a keyboard all day, every day. So I really only had 2 options. I could listen to audiobooks or I could listen to podcasts. So I did neither, and instead I downloaded YouTube videos, and
That's amazing.
This is absolutely a podcast.
And I would listen.
Yeah, they have like those long plays that you can they just play the entire thing. Yeah, that's amazing.
So I was downloading and listening to these Let's Play videos, and I found a Final Fantasy VII one. I think it was Eurogamer was the channel, and it was one longtime fan of Final Fantasy VII who was playing it with a newcomer to Final Fantasy VII who had never played it before. And for a while, I could follow the story based on like the music and what they were saying, but at some point, the game opens up quite a bit, and it's a lot harder to place where they are and what's happening in the game.
You're like, if only somebody was giving descriptions of what... Oh my gosh, I have an idea.
I mean, yeah, and that's kind of where the format for First Encounter was born. At the time, I didn't realize there were other audio-only Let's Play podcasts that were kind of doing the same thing.
And then you decided to do a podcast with Haney because...
I mean, he was really the only person that...
Who else? Who else?
Yeah, there's no one else. I only know Haney. He's the one person.
Are there other people? I don't even think we exist.
I'm not convinced. But yeah, I mean, I've known Haney for over 20 years at this point. We've been best friends for a very long time. And also, as someone who isn't fully comfortable being in the spotlight and doesn't enjoy talking a lot, I know that Haney's pretty much the opposite of me in that regard. And I really want to capture his energy and brightness.
Yeah, when you're starting a podcast and you don't like talking very much, you definitely want somebody who does like
absolutely.
talking a lot.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't like organizing or structure or anything like that. Like, I don't like making the structure. I like following structure. So like having someone like Chris who's just very structured and is like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And I'm just like, okay. Like I was just like, yeah, just like put me in front of something and let me speak for a while. And like, and I'll be perfectly fine.
You're my star.
I like that.
Yeah, Haney, how did you feel about when Chris approached you about the idea of the podcast and that you would be forced to play Final Fantasy VII? What were your initial thoughts on that?
I feel like I was pretty on board always. So Chris and I have always had this like, we want to do something together kind of like thought. And we've like tried different stuff over the years. You know, we've like kicked around ideas about like, you know, making board games together, making card games together, video games, you know, making a YouTube channel, making, eventually it became a podcast. And it's like, we always like would get started and stuff, right? And then like life would happen and we'd have to like drop it. And like this First Encounter is the furthest we've ever gotten on a project together. So First Encounter itself, I'm absolutely stoked about. When we first started, though, and Chris was like, "Hey, like, let's do a podcast. Let's like have you play Final Fantasy VII." I was like, "All right, I guess." Like, I was like, "I'm not 100% convinced that this is gonna work out the way you want it to." Obviously, I was very pleasantly surprised and proven wrong. But I was pretty into the idea of playing Final Fantasy VII because it had just been such a huge like thing. Like, I'm a big anime fan, I'm a big other video game fan, so like I would go to conventions, I would, you know, have been part of like all the other nerd subcultures and stuff, and whenever like talk around Final Fantasy came up, I would always just be like, well, time for me to do something else because I can't contribute to this conversation, and I don't have to do that anymore, so I'm pretty stoked about that. But yeah, you know,
part of it now.
Yeah, and you know, the podcast idea I was super on board with. The Final Fantasy VII idea, I was like, yeah, I'm intrigued, and I think I was hesitant about the format. I was hesitant about how everything would go down, and then I love it. Like I'm so happy now that I don't think I think Chris did a delightful job of proving me very, very wrong.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. I love to hear that. Are you in general, like, would you have been playing a video game anyway?
I probably would have been playing a video game. I don't know that would have been a 2-decade-old video game at the time.
Okay.
Like around that time, I'm trying to think. I would think that was like the worst of my Age of Empires addiction, right, Chris? Was around when we were first kicking this off.
It was a problem.
Yeah, and I think I was like 500 hours deep into Age of Empires 2.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
Obviously, that is not. You know, it's funny. I just said that I wouldn't be playing a 2-decade-old game, and I absolutely remember that Age of Empires 2 is a 2-decade-old game.
I was gonna say, I didn't think that was a new one. Oh, it was the remaster.
it was the definitive edition, which is like the remaster.
You
but
won't play the Age of Empires 3 with me, even though it's got trains. There's trains, Haney.
I do love trains. But yeah, I would have been playing a game, and I probably wouldn't have been streaming or recording or doing anything with it. It would have just been for me.
Which is a normal thing to do.
Yeah.
A very normal thing to do. Where do y'all live?
So we live in Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, where what state are you guys in? Or in region?
We are currently in DC. Well, Arlington.
Okay.
Yeah, Ben lives here. I'm visiting.
Got it.
Yeah, so I've been in the area for like 5 years, and my huge announcement as of last night, fiance and I.
Whoa!
Congrats! Oh my God, that's the engagement joke from earlier.
That's the engagement joke from earlier.
Hey! I feel so included.
Oh my goodness. It was less than 24 hours ago. How exciting.
That's amazing. Congrats.
What an exciting day.
Thanks. Yeah, there was lots of machinations going on here, lots of secrecy and duplicity going on, and
I was part of a trick.
That's the best.
yeah, it was good. It was good. In the end, so my fiance's name is Jennifer, and yeah, I think
Your fiance's name.
whoop whoop, and she
Hi, Jennifer.
she'll listen to this at some point. She promises me.
My wife has been saying for 2 years she's gonna listen to this. So I don't know.
It always catches me off guard when I'm like making breakfast and I can hear my partner listening to the Hyrule Podcasters. I'm like, I already told you everything that happened, and you were sitting there watching TV on mute while I recorded. I don't understand.
Or like our mom will. I think mom's at like the end of season 1, so she'll randomly text me and be like, "I got to that spot where you called me out."
No.
When I make rap records, I like will shout out all these people's names, and like a year later they'll text me, and I'm like, ha, took you that long to listen to my album?
Let's
Real cool.
let's talk about rap records as soon as possible because that's cool. I had no idea that was a thing. I'm a big hip hop fan.
Oh, no way.
Well,
Yeah.
so we actually, if anybody missed last episode, we just did an episode interviewing Dunce Cap, talking about an album drop that just happened last week called I Love Video Games.
Awesome.
And it is Dunce Cap and Vinny Video. And Patrick helped produce a bunch of the tracks under We Are the Karma Kids record label under his producer hat, Lieutenant Head Trip.
It's awesome.
That is
Yeah,
so cool.
I've been running a little independent record label since, 2006. And it's mostly hip hop. We got a couple punk records out on the label, but I am producer, engineer, project manager, and I wear a lot of hats. I booked a lot of our shows when that was a thing that you could do.
Remember those days?
Oh my goodness. It's a nice thing to not have on my plate, but I really miss performing live, and that was probably where I made the most money and the most connections, was touring. But we decided to do something different than our usual. What do we even rap about usually? Eating, existing, life, emotions, sex.
It's very heady.
It's very heady.
very
very cerebral lyricism. But this was just like a really fun video game centric. We sample a bunch of retro games, and we only rap about playing games. It's like almost been a week now since the album came out. Yesterday was Bandcamp Friday. We got a lot of people to buy the album, and people have been listening. I think it's going to be good. This is the first record that Ben really loves. I think he's listened to one of the tracks like 17 times already.
Oh yeah, it's a banger.
rarity.
It's a banger for sure.
I would love to hear more. So I'm
Cool.
like I was saying, I'm a big hip hop boy. One of the We've talked about it, I think, briefly on our podcast before, but the only things I knew about Final Fantasy VII going into it was what had been on Mega Ran's Black Materia album, which I really loved, but I had
sick.
no understanding of what that album like really was about, because I was like, oh, these are just like really good rhymes. But like I've recently been re-listening to it now, and I'm like, oh, I get this now. Like I actually understand the content of the song, and it's like, and it makes it so much more even better. Yeah,
it's fun. Like I'd like to say the same thing about our record. Like even if you haven't played the games we're talking about, it's still fun. But once you understand what's going on in Mega Ran's world that he's building on that record, you feel even more included, and you understand.
It's so good.
How did you find out about Mega Ran?
So years and years and years ago, probably about 13 years ago.
Mhm.
There was a viral video from MC Chris, who at the time I didn't know who or what he was, right? He was just a guy with a
Right.
funny voice.
Yeah,
But it was like
Aquatine.
what's that?
Aquatine.
Yeah. So it was like it was a clip from Aquatine actually, where he was it was the I Want Candy song he did
Yep.
for that. And that had like gone pretty viral, and I was like, oh, this is hilarious. And then like I started listening to MC Chris, like found Fet's Vet, got really into like the Star Wars tracks that he had, and then started listening to more of his music and was like, oh, like do I like hip hop now? Like I had always been an emo kid. I was
Yes.
super into emo and screamo metal music. And then I was like, how did I get here? Like hip hop was never on my agenda for like music. And then I just like it, and it was definitely like nerdcore hip hop that like steered me towards it. Now I listen to just any hip hop that I find enjoyable. But
Nice.
I got in from MC Chris, and then like really enjoyed listening to him, kept listening to him, found some other artists that I enjoyed that were like tangentially related to him online,
Mhm.
and then found that he was touring while I was going to be at a convention. MC Chris was going to not be at the convention, but he was doing a show near the convention. So I ended up going with a couple of my friends from the convention, seeing MC Chris, and Megaran and Adam Warrock and
Mhm.
MC Lars.
I was gonna say, was it Lars?
Yeah, opened up for him, and those folk became like some of my favorites, and just from that
Yes.
show. And Megaran played Avalanche at that show, and I was like, oh, this is like a really cool like song, but I was like, I don't understand what it's about because of Final Fantasy VII. But I liked his Mega Man music because I was a huge Mega Man fan as a kid. So I was like, oh, and then he had a song from Little Nemo Dream Master, and I was like, oh, let's go. Like that was a really that was a big game for me when I was a kid. And so
Yeah, buddy.
just kept listening to more and more music, just found other artists. Eventually I found who's now my favorite hip hop artist, Schaefer the Dark Lord.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I ended up drawing some pictures. Like I also was an art student at the time, so I was like drawing some fan art of one of Schaefer the Dark Lord's like concept albums, right? Just like some like a weird like kind of abstract picture from it. And I was like, I'm gonna put this on Instagram and tag him in it. And he responded to me and was like, yo, this is amazing. Like, will you send this to me?
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, I'll send you a copy of it. And then a couple years later, a friend of mine moved to New York City and got involved in like burlesque and like burlesque dancing.
Sick.
And Schaefer is in that world as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And she became friends with him, and I was like, yo, next time you're hanging out with him, like ask him if he remembers this picture. And I sent it to her, and she was like, yes, he does remember you. And then the next time I saw him, I had him sign the picture, and we just talked like forever about like our
Sweet.
mutual friend and stuff. And
That's
so
great.
it's
Those
really
are really
cool.
good guys. I played a show with Schaefer, MC Lars, and Wheatus.
Oh
in
yeah, Wheatus
Brooklyn.
is great.
Yeah, I had no idea. It was the most bizarre thing. Dunce and I just had a relationship with this venue, Gold Sounds, and they hit us up. Hey, do you want to open for this thing? And we showed up and we rapped, and I was in the green room beforehand, and there's this guy making fun of this greasy quesadilla that he was eating. And it turns out that was the lead singer of Wheatus. They were just like kicking it backstage, so chill. I worked the merch table the whole time because I was a little under the weather. And MC Lars was like, thanks for selling a bunch of my shirts. You want one for free? And I was like, yeah. So I got this awesome like melty mole man shirt from
Yeah, from
it's a
Simpsons.
great
Yeah.
shirt. Yeah,
I know the exact shirt. Yeah.
It's awesome. It's one of my favorites. I like wash it inside out, and I got a little bit of campfire residue on it a few months ago, and I like lost my mind. I was like, how do I get it out? But Megaran's on I Love Video Games. He's one of our, he's in our like strange niche underground hip hop circle. He lent a beat as Random Beats, which is one of the best songs on the album, and he has a verse on one of the songs. And he was so excited to be a part of it. He's such a sweet guy.
He's like the nicest person, and yeah, like from what I can tell, like I've only had like fan interactions like at shows and stuff, but like just so sweet, and like just seems like gives really great hugs and was just like super like genuine too. Like was just like when he's like, oh, thanks for coming. You know, like I know like, you know, a lot of times when people, it's just like kind of like, you know, automaton response, right? Like when you're on a show.
Yeah, for sure.
It did not feel like that from him. It was like,
No.
I genuinely believe that like that he appreciated that I came to see him
Certainly.
at that like venue. And it was that's a very like that stuck with me as a fan. I was like, wow, like I feel like you care. That's awesome.
You can tell he cares.
Yeah.
He's a sweetheart.
Chris, speaking of rap, we have a goal, I think, on Patreon, and I don't remember what it is or what the level is, but our Patreon, one of our Patreon goals is if we meet it, Haney and Chris will write a rap and then Haney will perform in the rap. So maybe we can collaborate
Yes!
with Ben and Patrick on
I'll make you a beat for that for sure.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's
pick
amazing.
a video game. Yeah, you can pick a video game and I'll sample it or something. That would be a lot of fun.
Let's go. I'm so stoked. Chris, do you remember what tier that is or what the goal is for that?
I mean, we can make it whatever.
Chris is like, well, now that it seems feasible, I'm gonna scale it way down. So
No, I mean, we just pulled out all of our goals because we're only presenting a couple
at a time.
Yeah.
Okay.
we're doing
Yeah,
one
because
or two,
you all actually
at once.
just hit, I think, your first Patreon goal, right?
2.
Oh, okay. So
Congratulations!
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so-
cue audience noise.
woo! Yeah, so I've been. I guess I watched your Quest 64 playthrough. So that must have been. That's the second. Is that so? That'd be the second one. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's the second goal?
3?
Oh, okay.
We're on 3 now.
Oh, I just voted on that. That's okay. I just
Yeah,
voted on
yeah.
that one. I think. Then.
Yeah, the third one.
Yeah.
Who
Cool,
did your
cool.
pixel art?
Just someone on Fiverr.
Oh,
Oh, that's the third. Oh my God, you guys are killing it over on Patreon. man.
wow! Look at you go.
Thank you. And also, thank you so much for the support.
Yeah,
Oh.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, Pat and I kind of talked about it, and we pretty much just said like, "Yo, let's just, if as we get more people subscribe to us, we just turn those memberships around and just keep subscribing to
the
other
community.
people." Yeah, because like for us, I mean, and kind of maybe pivoting a bit more to maybe more of like the businessy side of all of this. When I approached Patrick about this idea, I said at a minimum, like let's do something that we will have fun doing, right? And playing video games with each other and talking about them, we have a blast doing that. So at a minimum, like we're meeting kind of that like base level.
So your base level was it has to be fun.
Yes.
It has to be fun.
That's
right.
really
Which-
funny. That was Chris and I's as well.
Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
That's
And we're like,
good. You can
yeah.
tell.
And if it stops being fun, then we need
Why do
to
it? Then it's
reevaluate.
work.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And but we have certainly talked about, if we can get to the point where, we can make a living doing this, like we would also take that. Like we would be fine in that situation as well.
And it's funny, Ben pitched this idea to me, and every time he's like, so I have an idea, it's gonna be more work for you. Are you okay doing this? And I'm like, I've been running a record label that makes enough money to press CDs and shoot videos and stuff, but it's not like I'm living off of it. And I've been
Right.
doing this for years. But Ben is actually a little bit more business-minded than I am. And it's nice to have somebody who is willing to draw the line at, is this still fun? And also kind of move forward with ideas that could possibly get us more viewers in a fun way.
Right.
I think
right.
you guys are off to a great start. So when Chris and I were heading into the way we found you was like we were heading into season 2 and we're like, well, we made friends with other Final Fantasy podcasts for season 1 to like, grow our community. Now we got to start finding, Zelda podcasts, right?
Yeah.
And yours was the first one I listened to, and I was like, oh, like this is great. And I had meant to like only listen to like 5 minutes of each one, and then like start like narrowing it down a little bit from there. Ended up listening to like 3 episodes in a row. Of yours, and I was like, crap.
That's good. I'm glad the first couple episodes still hold up.
I think they do. I've re-listened to them. I think it's good.
I will never. You have to pay me to listen to those early episodes.
The first episode of your show was what really hooked me because the way both of you were talking with each other about your childhood and about your experience playing games together, and then like how that transcended up was just like it resonated so hard with like why Chris and I got started, but also with like me and my like brothers and my mom growing up too, like how we played video games together as a family. And it was just like I was like, this is literally like this is perfect. Like this is ultimate cozy for me right now.
Are we talking to ourselves?
Yeah, basically.
It's kind of bizarre.
I keep especially when y'all were going off about the hip hop stuff. I'm just like I keep side-eyeing Patrick as he's like, is your name? Like I'm just like this. If you would have moved to New York City, that would have been like, okay, you are the same person then. That would that's the one thing that's missing. You would have moved to New York City. You would have fallen in with the same crew, and you guys would probably be doing a podcast together. That would have been what would have happened.
Well, I had
sorry,
a couple. I had a couple friends that tried to do a podcast in my home studio, but I refused to stop the party for anything. So you can like get a rapper into the closet and have him record, a verse, but sitting down and recording a podcast in my studio proved to be. My buddy Premrock was trying to record a podcast at my spot, and I was like, okay, we'll put up this like screen, the kind that you like
like
get
the folding
changed
screen.
behind
Like a privacy
and your
screen.
silhouettes shows, and you can keep it PG-13. And I was like, this will be fine. And he like recorded it and was like, dude, it sounds like everybody's just hanging out next to me. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah, that's like,
yeah.
didn't you want that authentic sound? I don't know what you wanted.
You can like rent out the studio,
It's
but
like
we're
this
still
is
gonna
Astoria. What do you expect?
What do you
this is how it
expect?
goes. Whereas like now we are sitting in a small room. There is sound treatment boards everywhere. The windows are closed. The blinds are closed. The curtains are closed. We're talking in like these beautiful microphones. Like it's just an entirely different. One is taking it more seriously. It's taking it more seriously, right? And I mean, that's one of the things when I talk to Patrick, I'm like, so it can be fun, but that doesn't mean it can't, like, it can both be fun and serious. Like we can make this
It can
like
be fun and quality. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And Pat was real big on the like audio quality above, because the only thing that we have is our audience only listens.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't see me. They're not interacting with me. They're not chatting with me.
Yeah.
And making that was his big thing.
And I'm not rhyming.
Right. And that's one of the things that I noticed about your podcast as well, that your audio quality and the work you do, because if anyone hasn't listened to First Encounters, there's the bit different where they are coming back in after playing and laying on top commentary about what's happening. Which is a lot like how the No One Can Know About This podcast is structured. It's a really labor intensive is my take on what you all are doing. But the audio quality is terrific. The cuts in between historical play and current commentary flows really nicely. So what is you don't have to give us like the insider secrets, but who does the editing, who's in charge of producing? How do you all break that down?
I think it's time for me to step forward and say it's all Chris. Chris does 95 to 99% of everything for the podcast. I just want everyone to be aware and understand that. Like
Noted.
I show up and talk. Chris is really the machine behind the First Encounter steam engine, if you will, and I will let Chris talk to you to specifics, because editing is terrifying to me.
I mean, if I'm the machine, does that make you the oil, Annie? Or
I thought I was the caboose.
no, only your oil can keep this train moving, Hanny.
I think that's a compliment.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I'm trying to think how far I can go into inappropriate, and then I was like, it's not our show, not today.
Speaking of which, Hanny, there was something you wanted me to remind you of before we started.
And I did not actually remember to do it, did we?
No, we didn't.
So we've done a couple of these guests episodes now, and every time I have forgotten to ask, is this explicit or not?
It's not, but we'll just bleep you out.
Yeah.
And I enjoy bleeping out using Zelda sound effects.
That's what Chris does with the FF stuff too. Like we don't bleep a lot, only when it's really funny. Like because we rate ours as explicit anyway, so we don't have to bleep anything out. But like sometimes it just makes it funnier to hear a chocobo work instead of just like an F-bomb.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For
You
sure.
do the exact same thing. That's what we did on the video games album too. It's my first non-explicit release, and I just put Earthworm Jim, etc. sound effects over the curse
Oh, that's
words.
awesome.
Yeah, we primarily went that route because all of the Zelda games, especially more than maybe even like some of the Final Fantasy games, just in terms of like themes and things like that, like there are some of the games that are rated like E for everyone.
Yeah.
And our kind of take was like, well, if anyone can play the games, we would really
Anyone
like
should be able to listen.
Yeah.
And it's not like these are, we don't talk about like engaging, interesting things, but it's just kind of like, oh, we just won't do the explicit piece of it, which for me is very normal. I mean, I might swear like one time every 6 months. I think for Pat,
Although
it's been a little tougher.
interestingly, Ben has sworn more on the podcast. You use the S word.
Oh yeah,
You're always like, oh,
Naughty.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah,
yeah. I'm a foul mouthed mother. I can't stop cursing.
yeah, for sure.
It's absurd. Man, living in New York for all those years, I'd come home for Thanksgiving like, Mom, the turkey's great. I just couldn't turn it off. It's a little different now.
Well, it's definitely. I think I am code switching when I am hanging out with you for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of like my persona, you know, and I mean we all do that, right? I probably bring you up, you probably bring me down,
Absolutely,
type of thing. Yeah.
So, Chris, what program do you use to edit?
Audition. It's the first one that I started using. I'm just stealing Henny's copy of it, so
Sure are.
yeah,
That's great.
He
Good.
teaches, so he gets a discount.
That's the thing to do. You're like, I brought the login, and you bring the hard work.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And Chris, what's your background in audio engineering and editing?
Self-taught.
The First Encounter podcast.
Yeah.
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
All right.
It's a good place to get started.
Yeah, for sure. I started using Audition because it's what Henny had. Started learning it specifically to produce the show, and at this point, it's all I know. I don't know how to use anything else.
Cool.
So.
I'm sure in a pinch you could figure them out. All these DAWs are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
On a basic level.
Yeah.
One of the things I find the most fascinating about our like editing too is just like how much you can listen to the first couple episodes and the later episodes and hear Chris's actual improvement as like a audio engineer, I guess, if you will. But
I was definitely figuring it out.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just really impressive though, like to go back and like hear like, the original cut of episode 1 and be like,
Oof.
wow, that's a rough, hard cut. And then like go to like now and be like, I know for a fact because I was there that we recorded these on like this 2-minute span, right, of doing something could have been like especially now that we have like an ad read that we have to that we do at the beginning of every episode, right? So like that has to be takes because sometimes we mess it up, sometimes
Sure.
we do stuff, and like I'm like, this is like 6 takes that Chris has just like melded together, and I would never know. Like this
Wow.
sounds perfect. Like
Awesome.
And I'm not
Very
an
cool.
audio person either. Like I don't like have an engineer background in audio or recording or editing or anything like that. But like, so like I don't know that like my ear is really like the be all end all. But to me, like as an average like podcast listener, like perfect. Like this sounds great.
Sounds to me like you're an above average podcast listener.
Don't sell yourself.
I listen
And-
to a lot of podcasts.
Being the audience is sometimes all you need. Speaking of ad reads, we're gonna take an ad break real quick.
Yeah, who just showed up here in the Discord
because
stage?
Beetle is in the Discord.
What are you doing here,
yeah.
Beetle?
And Beetle has something to sell us.
All right. Thanks so much for that, Beetle. What a great product. Can't wait to go home and use this.
Nice.
Beetle's always so helpful.
Wow.
He's the best. He's the
Love
What a
best.
cool guy.
Amazing.
Will you be
Well-
my love, Beetle?
Are you asking me? Because yes.
All right, let's get it.
Hey.
Be right there,
Oh,
Chris. Sorry,
we got another person in the audience. So Simon's been here. He's on the road listening
What
to
up,
us. But I think
Simon?
we got someone from your neck of the woods.
indeed Caladria. Welcome.
Audrey, how you doing?
What were you about to say?
I was gonna ask. I wanted to get you guys' take a little bit on how podcasting has or has not been affected for you personally by the pandemic. Because I know, well, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you guys started during the pandemic, and Chris and I started about 3 months before the first case hit the U.S.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's a much different. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely some differences in how that rolled out. So I'm super curious to hear about your Ben and Patrick, your experiences, and then we can talk about what that was like for us as well.
Ben, you can take this first.
Yeah. So this started. So I mean, we started in January of 2021 is when we really kind of like started to make moves. And so I called Patrick, I think in the middle of a run in fall of 2020 and said like, hey, and I'll say like, I will shout out, as I always have, the No One Can Know About This podcast, because I'd listened to them for years, and I was on a run, and I was like, well, I can do this, essentially. Like, there's no this doesn't seem like this seems very difficult, but it seems like something I could have a lot of fun doing. And so I called Patrick and said, hey, what if we did this idea where you and I do a podcast together and we talk about playing through Zelda games? And at that point, especially like during the pandemic, I was really looking for an outlet for creative energy. And this seemed like a place where I could both do something that I'm really comfortable with, video games, have fun playing video games with Patrick. And I'd also just started an MBA. And I was like, oh, well, and maybe this could like turn into something. And so it was a confluence of a lot of those factors that really kind of got that going. And then like you said, I mean, we have only been doing it during the pandemic. So that is certainly our biggest thing, is that we almost never record together. And so we have had some technical hurdles that we've been trying to figure out exactly how to manage.
The biggest thing is trying to get... I'm like, if we're doing this, it has to sound great. So I want the video game audio separately so that I can mix each of our voices and the video game audio into one thing, but starting from 3 separate parts. And that's definitely been the biggest struggle, because on a Mac, it's very difficult to build an internal microphone.
It's just like one of those things. I had no idea. Without,
my Mac refuses to even recognize external microphones.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to go through so many hoops, and thankfully, Ben's willing to figure that stuff out. But the pandemic affecting our podcast is kind of the opposite. It's how did vaccinations affect our podcast? We got jabbed up and we're able to sit next to each other and record now.
Right, that's been the biggest thing. I've gone back to, Pat was living in Ohio for a while. I was able to go back to Ohio, and we were able to do a bunch of recordings together. He came here. We were able to do a bunch of recordings together.
I mean, I'm here right now.
He's here right now. We're going to do a bunch of like work together. So that's really it, because for the most part, if we're not together, Patrick can't play just because of technology limits.
Because of the recording the audio, and because of passing save states back and forth.
Yeah, just all that kind of jazz. So getting jabbed has allowed us to do more in-person work together, which is great. It's much more fun doing it in person than on some random Tuesday night when I've been on Zoom calls all day and Patrick's exhausted from working. And it's like, great, so we're gonna get on for an hour and a half, and you just got to bring energy.
Yeah.
Eat a piece of chocolate, drink some green tea. This is like,
all right, here we go.
Let's do this.
So flipping it back to you two, what was it like making that transition then?
Yeah. Chris, do you want to take it, or you want me to speak to it?
Why don't you speak to it? Because
you're who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Chris and I had really good momentum going into this. He managed to get me excited about it. We managed to like record our first couple of episodes, and at the time they sounded good to us. Now, if I listen to them, I'm just like, what trash is this? But it's luckily we never really changed our personalities at all. So like that, there's still like the content. It's fun. Just the quality is not as good as I think it is now. But
Sure.
So we had started in December of 2019 talking about things and recording. And then our whole entire goal was to launch our podcast simultaneously with Remake launching. So that was
that's
March
smart.
1st, 2020, Chris. Was that right?
Yeah, early March. Might have been.
I think beginning of March 3rd maybe. But, like first week of March, we were like, okay, so like we have 4 months to figure this out. So we're going to, start playing the game. We're going to start figuring out recording, give us plenty of time to edit. And we had good steam going into it. And I think we got up through maybe 4 episodes, maybe 3. It's been a while before,
Been a while.
Got the first.
It was actually.
What's that?
I was just going to say it's episode 5 we got to. I know because we did the director commentary.
5, that's right, yeah.
Wow.
And so we got to episode 5, and then by March, obviously, we had our first cases. I had traveled in February. I will never forget this. It was one of the most wild experiences of my life. I was traveling for work. I was in Savannah, Georgia at the time, and came back. It was the last weekend in February, and I was trying to come back, and my plane got delayed, and I had to spend the night at a hotel in New York and get a flight the next morning. And I was taking a like hotel shuttle to my flight, and the driver had the radio on, and the radio was like, the first case of coronavirus has been found in like the state of New York, and it is in New York City. And I was like, oh, thank God, man, I'm not there, because like kind of like that selfish thought of like, oh, like thank God it's not me or it can't affect me. And then I looked out the window and I just see like New York City all around me, and I was like, that's
I am
right.
here.
It was a very selfish and very sobering moment. And then basically came back, and Chris and I just had a talk, and we're like, well, do we do this remotely? And Chris was emphatically like, no, we can't. Like the entire point of us doing this is to be together in the same room. So we ended up taking a couple months off. We released episodes up through I think March, or because we had already had them recorded.
Right.
So we had started releasing our episodes in March, released up through I think May or June, and at that time Chris and I didn't see each other for several months, and then kind of learned a little bit more, started doing, masking, social distancing, and limiting, who we were seeing. I was working from home already, and, Chris had, I think, been limited in his interactions, and we're like, okay, like let's try to just like, do stuff like as safely as possible, and kind of started getting back into it. And we were able to do it and, continually do it until the vaccines came out, but it wasn't ever a fully comfortable thing, right?
Yeah.
Like it was not comfortable at all, and it was very I wish I could feel better about this kind of thing, and ended up literally at ASAP. Chris got vaccinated a week before me. His birthday is a little luckier than mine where it falls, and the way they did the rollout here was by age by a week. So Chris had turned 30 already in February. Sorry, Chris, for outing you. And I was not turning 29 until, or I was 29, not turning 30 until the end of June. And the cutoff for the vaccine was age 30, and then everyone else under age 30 at the time. And I was like, oh, cool. So I get lumped in with the everyone else. So I had to wait a little while longer. But as soon as we got vaccinated, we felt so much better about just being in, in person and being together. And I'm obviously super stoked we got vaccinated as well. And it was hard trying to figure stuff out. We would want to do bigger things, right? Like go to conventions or like try to tell people about the show, but like we weren't going anywhere. Like
right.
I was not leaving my house like at all. And I don't think Chris really was either.
Yeah.
And so like, it was like, well, we're not going to go to a convention in the year 2020. That's for sure. And then, that became, or 2021, it seems like at this point. And so, there's still stuff that we want to do that we haven't been able to do. But I think we've adapted pretty well. Chris, do you have other thoughts or additional ideas?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. I did want to ask you two, though, because I know there's a lot of plans that Haney and I have when it's safe again. I'm excited about conventions in particular. But I was wondering if there's any plans for Hyrule podcasters post-pandemic, once everything's behind us, hopefully.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would love to eventually attend conventions and meet all of our new audio-only Let's Play podcasters in real life. I think Troidel is in Oregon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
and I look forward to either getting to Troidel or getting Troidel into my studio and doing some stuff together. Beyond that, I haven't even thought of the world outside of speaking into a microphone sometimes in the same room as one other person.
Right.
But now that you mention it, I'm like, oh snap, I got all this Mega Man stuff. I could wear my Mega Man helmet in my arm. I guess we're the Hyrule podcasters.
That's all right.
Not the Mega Man podcasters.
Can't believe this is the day that you and I get to start our Mega Man podcast.
Yes.
I asked, is there any Mega Man audio only Let's Play out there? And somebody in our Discord community said, that's impossible. And I took that as a challenge.
That sounds like a legitimate challenge because that has one of the best storylines.
Yeah.
Mega Man 3, come on. All right.
Come on.
We're getting way off topic
all
here.
you
but
have
yeah.
to do is be good enough at the game that it's not like died again.
Right.
And I have played those games hundreds, maybe thousands of times. So I'm just saying,
I mean,
watch out.
So, I mean, what I would say, our kind of division of labor, right, is we both play, we both comment, and then Patrick handles all the audio production. And then on my plate is a lot of like the operational, like business side of it and trying to, figure out the best like moves and how to, kind of position ourselves.
Right.
And
Ben recently came to me with a business move.
yeah, we'll get there in just one sec. I mean, I would say long-term plans. I would love to get, everybody. I mean, I think the big plan would be to try and make pitches to essentially the folks that are in this sphere and say, hey, why don't we put together a cooperative and run it like a cooperative and really try and build our community that way? Because I think there are a lot of learnings that are happening independently that would only benefit the entire community if a lot of those things were shared. And I think that there's an opening for something like that. And so I had actually pitched a while back in the audio only Let's Play Discord, which there'll be links to in the show notes, about doing a digital festival for all of us. And I'm hoping that that's something that I can put together this winter, just as like, hey, let's like have fun. Let's raise some money for, some awesome causes and get some people excited. Because I've really enjoyed just being part of the community, helping it grow and just learning so much from it that I think there's something there. It's just a matter of like, are there the resources to kind of like make all that happen?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that
sounds really cool. Come together right now over audio only Let's Play podcasts.
Let's if you're interested in having your old friends first encounter involved in that digital festival,
100,
most certainly,
100%. Yeah.
I'd love that.
Also, Patrick, our Mega Man podcast is going to be called 20XX.
That'd be amazing.
Brilliant. Wow. All right. Bye, Ben and Chris. We got some stuff. Ben has said many times that his biggest fear is that now that I am a podcaster, will start another podcast that will be insanely successful and have to drop.
As long as I can be the businessman. I mean, I'm just trying to run the business. Just trying to run the business.
It was inevitable.
So as we kind of get to the end today, I think kind of what I wanted to close with was if you all could tell us a little bit about your season 2. I know that you're playing Majora's Mask, but maybe just a little bit more about the decision to play that and kind of what's happened. I'm pretty sure I have episode 3 in my queue to listen to at some point this weekend.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. We can absolutely talk about that. And then before we head out, I'd love to hear about, I know you guys are on a small break right now, about what's coming up for us. I'm really excited to get some more good Hyrule podcasters in my life. But yeah, so I can talk about the decision to play Majora's Mask, and then I would love to hear from Chris about how his journey is going so far, both in the game and then as like the person being in the hot seat, as we call it.
Smoothly. Very smoothly.
The decision to me, the decision was based around making sure that Chris had the same level of emotional connection to a game that he gave me with Final Fantasy VII. So when he gave me Final Fantasy VII, he gave me a fully formed, amazing world to lose myself in, and I was able to fall in love. And I wanted to pay him back for it. Both in a here's a gift, my good friend, for what you've shared with me, and also F you because of everything you put me through. Here's this. But Final Fantasy VII being Chris's favorite game, my first thought was, well, let's play my favorite game. But unfortunately, my favorite game is Chrono Cross, which Chris has played. So it wouldn't. We wanted to stick with the format, the idea of like being able to not, to play through it for the first time, right, and be really like into the learning process on mic. So that discounted Chrono Cross, and we had a couple of other ideas. Chris, do you care if I throw them out, or do you want to keep them for us?
No, go for it.
So some of the other ideas we had were some of my other favorite games growing up that Chris never had any interaction with. Majora's Mask was a huge one for me. Luigi's Mansion is actually another huge one for me. The first Luigi's Mansion game is in my top 3 games of all time.
Yeah.
I love that game.
Oh my goodness.
And that still might come up at some point. I don't know if it'll be a story-driven, like AOLP season for us, or if it'll be, something different. But I need Chris to play Luigi's Mansion regardless.
Yeah, gotta get it done.
Because that game is incredible.
Chris,
and then,
I've never played Luigi's Mansion. You and me, audio only, let's play Luigi's Mansion, and we kick these guys out. That's how you do it. That's how you do it.
Now I know how it feels.
I'm ready.
Main rival to 20XX Pod. So there was some other ideas in there too. So there was Halo, right? Because Halo has a really rich storyline. Chris isn't an FPS person, and has no idea that there's even a storyline to Halo.
As a lot of people,
to a degree,
Like,
knowing that there is a storyline versus like knowing, like that there is a story mode versus like actually knowing like how deep and rich the story is.
Yeah, most of the people's storyline for Halo is, I used to have to carry my TV over to my friend's house.
And plug my 360 in and
right.
hope it doesn't red ring.
Yeah, precisely.
Halo is actually our mom's favorite franchise.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
we play
she's beaten all the games.
So if you want to involve our mom in your Halo season,
let her know. She'll
I'm down. Let's go.
She'll sign
Chris
right
and I are big mom people, so
kind of a big mom guy. No big deal.
Yeah,
moms are the best.
I'm a giant mama's boy, and Chris's mom is our producer. So,
Yes.
Oh, you guys have a producer? Wow.
Yeah, we have our producer level patron.
Wow.
Chris's mom is very
Shout
very
out
kind.
to Chris's mom.
Thanks, Mom.
So some of the other games, so Chrono Cross was the first one that came up. Then we thought about Luigi's Mansion, then Halo, then Skies of Arcadia was another game I loved for the Dreamcast, which is, longer and probably more closer to like FF7 as like a JRPG style kind of game.
Right.
In the end, I got really excited about Zelda and about Majora's Mask, and that's really what it ended up being was, Chris and I just kind of like talking through each of the options, and everything's still on the table. Like, I don't think we've discounted anything really, but Majora's Mask just seemed like the next step to take. And the hardest part for that is that it's a really big departure from Final Fantasy. So it's a pretty big ask of our fan base to stick with us. But, as we have some of our fans currently in the audience listening, it seems like people like us enough to not care what the game we're necessarily playing is, or to give anything we're going to do a shot. So that's been really exciting to see people stick with us and keep through, even though, this is a pretty major franchise shift.
Nice.
And it would have been interesting if you all would have picked like if you would have picked and chosen something much more obscure, or I mean, you are at least in like a mainline like video game franchise,
Right,
which is helpful. Like,
yeah.
there was one game you just said on the Dreamcast that I've never heard of that game. Whatever you just said.
No one ever has heard of Skies of Arcadia
There you
except
go.
me.
Yeah, that's one of the ones like
That's
sure.
not true, but yeah.
yeah. Where it's like, oh right, Zelda. People are like, I know what Zelda is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zelda's the guy with the green hat.
Right.
Oh!
The green hat.
No, that's Tingle you're thinking of.
That's
right.
Tingle.
That's right.
That's a taste of our interview with Dunscap.
Yeah.
As Chris would say, the titular character, Tingle.
I do. It's true.
But so that's kind of where the decision to go into Zelda and into Majora's Mask came from. Was just basically, it was me being like, I want to give Chris back some emotional connection to a game that I have a deep emotional connection to, especially from my childhood, and Majora's Mask just fit the bill. And
Great.
From
a
there,
good
Chris,
reason.
I'd love to hear about not only about how the game is going, but also like, how's it feel to be the person playing it? I mean, you're getting added a lot more in the Discord for your shenanigans on mic and things like that. So it's kind of a different side of things for you, I think.
Yeah, it's a little weird, a little different. But I mean, the game's amazing and loving the game. Really just crushing it, no problems at all. Just pro gaming it up.
Is that a beetle noise?
Yeah, that was me being beetly angry.
But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing game. I'm having a great time exploring Clocktown for the first time, meeting all the characters and learning their backstory. One thing that's kind of interesting, at least editing-wise, compared to 7, is each recording so far has ended up being 2 episodes, whereas in 7, each recording is 1 episode.
Because Haney is not as good at timing as Chris, apparently.
I mean, I wouldn't say...
Yes, and?
No, I mean, it's a completely different game, right?
Yeah.
Like, in Final Fantasy 7, it's, you have a much more straightforward path to take, whereas in Majora's Mask... like the story beats are so much harder to plan out because I could do anything.
Sure.
Chris
sure.
really likes hide and go seek with the bombers. Plays it every chance he can.
Yeah, they're great. Real good.
I remember in your first episode, I think one of you commented, must have been Haney, just like, you're going to love the bombers. And I'm just like, you're going to hate the bombers.
He hated the bombers so much.
They're no good. They're bad.
No, it's real fun for me.
They're stinkers. They're little stinkers.
Yeah. But it's really exciting to have a game that's so open and focused on like discovery, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm missing that quite a bit these days. I don't feel like modern games, they feel a lot more linear, at least in design. It feels like the developers have a certain way they expect you to approach the game, or...
Right way to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, and Majora's Mask has its story, and
Certainly.
it's got the Bomber's Journal for you to track the quests if you're just trying to hit those. But the most enjoyable part of the game, at least for me, is like just discovering how people are connected to each other, or like what weird random events are going to trigger based on nothing that you're doing.
That's a great feeling. I long to play a game that feels like that.
Yeah, it's super good. I'm having a great time with it. I can tell it's going to be a game I'll be playing for the rest of my life. So
Wonderful.
Well, that's great. That sounds like a great season.
Yeah. Speaking of seasons, though, what's going on?
So,
Tell me. I can't hold out anymore. Tell me about Hyrule Podcasters. What's next?
Ben, all right. We started our podcast with the plan to go in release date order
Correct.
of the games.
Correct. Primarily because I did a bunch of research and there were a lot of people that were doing it in chronological order of like
Right.
the Zelda timeline. And I was like, well, let's not do that, because that is that even though they're not audio only Let's Plays, that's the market is being served that product already.
Also,
Right.
knocking out The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System is a quick run, and to start there with a game that Ben's super familiar with and that I'm pretty familiar with was a great starting point.
Right, like, I mean, I can sit down and beat that game in an hour, like, if I want to.
Yeah,
So-
and then we had to play Adventure of Link,
Which is amazing.
which is the
It's an amazing game. It's so much
I'm halfway
fun.
through the season right now.
Oh my
It's
god!
amazing.
If only you could hear what went into that season. We will let the world know one day. So then the next one, obviously, which we just finished up, A Link to the Past. Well, what comes after that is Link's Awakening.
Which is Patrick's favorite game.
Yeah, I mean,
Period.
yeah, I mean,
Like, he's a Mega Man boy. Favorite game, though.
Ben's, stretching it a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I love Dreams and I love that game, but we decided to maybe skip the Game Boy version and go to the Game Boy Color version.
Link's Adventure DX.
Which technically came out after Ocarina. Anyway, I show up in DC and Ben comes downstairs and is like, I have an idea.
Oh no.
So we had just recorded our reactions to Nintendo's announcements.
The September Nintendo Direct.
And
Right.
he was like, hey, everybody's going to be playing Ocarina. And I would love to play Ocarina at the same time as so many other people. What do you think about A, playing it and doing a double season at the same time as Link's Awakening? B, hurrying through Link's Awakening.
And doing like a Netflix binge drop. Hey, here's a 6-episode season right now. Here's everything just in your podcast feed.
Or just swapping the seasons and doing Ocarina right now and then taking our time with Link's Awakening later. And we have officially decided to play Ocarina of Time.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
And just go straight into that 3D adventure. We actually already have one episode in the can.
We do. Yeah, we've already recorded an episode. Yeah.
And I love Link's Awakening so much, but it's always going to be there. And I do think that like Ben is the more business minded, and to be able to grab some of those listeners that are revisiting Ocarina is a really good idea. We're not just doing this for us at this point. We want to expand our audience. We want to be a part of the zeitgeist. So we're going for it.
Nice. That's exciting. I mean, it's also an incredible game, so.
It is a really incredible game, and I have never beaten it.
Ooh.
I've played it so many times, but I just never get all the way through. So it's really a great opportunity for me to start the fall with a big goal. And again, Link's Awakening will be there. I'll beat it probably 3 more times before we start the season. Because that's just what I do. I can play that game at the very end of the night after everybody goes to sleep.
Have you played the Switch version?
I have.
We both have, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that
lovely.
was the first game I beat to completion in like 5 or 6 years, a couple years ago when it came
That's
out.
a
That
great
game was
one
amazing.
to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like Simon, one of our
What up, Simon? Oh,
one
he
of
just
our
left.
patrons. He just
Oh, no.
left the chat.
Simon, please.
I texted him. So we roundtabled this with a Discord, and everybody was like, play Link's Awakening, it's the better game. And I'm like, I'm not here to play favorites. I want to know if you think that it's a good idea to do this from like a business standpoint. And I asked Simon, and Simon said, Simon had already said that he wasn't going to play along with Link's Awakening with us because he just beat it for Switch. And I was like, I'll lend you a 3DS. And he has not accepted my offer to lend him a DS or a 3DS since that system came out, and I've been offering for like 20 years. And he's like, nope, I'm good. I got my games. I don't need that thing. And
That sounds familiar.
And I just like so many people. And then he said, I'm going to start playing Ocarina so that I've started before you even start your season. So we're just going for it. Why not?
I love it.
It's our podcast.
awesome.
We make the rules. Screw it.
Hell yeah.
I think that Nintendo announcement might be the most excited I've been about video game announcements in years.
Exactly.
Just like being able to play every or not every, but being like getting access to the library of amazing N64 games is so good. And then, Chris, are you did you follow that, because there was an announcement? There was a little bit in there for you as well.
I didn't watch it. No.
The Genesis games are also being added to that,
which is
to
just
that
a
membership.
mind-blowing move.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The Genesis was always at our grandparents', and we had the Nintendo at home, and the fact that they are merging is outrageous to my brain. I can't even fathom. I mean, it's when Sonic showed up in Smash Bros. Before everybody was in Smash Bros.
Right,
it was
right.
like mind-blowing, and this is just
Smash Bros, the hit
outrageous.
sequel to Final Fantasy VII.
And Ocarina of Time too. By that logic.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Wind Waker and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I can't wait to
and-
get to
and-
Wind
and-
Waker.
yeah.
Wind Waker.
and Mega Man.
And yeah, for real. Although I don't like the Mega Man the way that they did Mega Man in Smash.
Me either.
Bros.
I'm not a
he's
big
like
fan.
he's like a American cartoon version of Mega
Yeah.
Man. I'm like, give me X or something. I don't know. Anyway,
So-
that's a discussion for another time.
for the 2066 pod or the
Yeah.
20XX pod. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
20XX,
exactly.
let's
Yeah.
go.
Let's go. Let's get it.
Yeah, so so I also just want to kind of commend Patrick. This move goes against a lot of what kind of Patrick believes in, which is like, we told the audience we were doing one thing,
Yep.
and they have an expectation that we're going to do that one thing.
Yep.
And it can be very difficult to.
My skin is tingling right now.
Yeah,
It's
and
hard
I mean-
for me to do this.
I mean, I went downstairs when he first got here. Like, we were in a good spot, sat him down and said, I need to have a business conversation with you about this idea. Like, this isn't about your feelings or my feelings. This is like, what do we think would be best for the audience and our podcast, right? And like, it can be tough to separate that. I think especially, I mean, Patrick, Patrick's ran a album label, has been in that like business position, but it's kind of hard to get pitched from somebody else. Like, hey, I want to make this shift that I know is going to go against what you would really potentially like to do, what you think we should do. But no, I just commend you for,
Thank
taking
you.
time to think through it, right?
I did.
We didn't make a quick judgment.
I called my partner. We talked it out. I always sleep on decisions like this. It might seem like silly to some people listening, but it was a huge decision. To
No,
make.
that's, I think in my experience with being a partner with Chris versus being friends of 2 decades, like there's very clear cut like differences in like our business partnership relationship and our friendship. Like our friendship comes through everything, but like there's definitely times where Chris and I have to sit down and we're like, hey, let's have a serious talk for a few minutes about a business decision, whatever it might be. And it can be nerve wracking. Like, I don't know. I sometimes I'll want to like bring something up to Chris, about like a direction I'd like to go in or something I'd like to try. And I'm like, why am I nervous talking to my friend of 2 decades,
Because
and for you, it's like
you're talking to your business partner.
Right.
And
Exactly,
I'm not
yeah.
talking to my brother. I'm talking to my business partner.
right.
That's hard to
I
separate.
totally get it.
Yeah, it's hard to put different hats on. Different hats on.
But we persevered.
So, yeah, and we couldn't be more excited. I mean, like Patrick said, we already have our first recording in the hopper, getting through the Great Deku Tree. We're still working on our voices. We keep I keep ruining my Navi voice, but I'll get it down eventually.
I recommend you just use Chris's tattle voice. Just make your voice as deep and manly as possible.
That's a great idea.
I love it.
That is a great idea.
Well, it was such a pleasure having both of you on our podcast and doing something a little different than obviously I think either one of us do on a regular basis. And it was really great to have you on and to chat, for this and to kind of find out more about the both of you and find out about your podcast. And we're just really looking forward to continuing to grow alongside both of you and hang out in your Discord. And I'm going to copy a bunch of your Discord over into our Discord. And yeah, so just really wanted to say thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to hang out with us on a Saturday morning.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
this was a blast. This was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. This was an absolute blast. I'm really stoked you guys invited us on, and would love to have you do something again with us in the future, whatever that might be.
Let's please keep doing stuff. This felt very natural.
All natural. Yes. Definitely more in the future. We got plenty to talk about, but we should probably just save it for another time.
I'm pretty sure I could sit here and talk all day, but yeah.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of
Hyrule Podcasters.
Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. You nailed it.
Thanks so much.
You nailed it.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of
Hyrule Podcasters.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Hyrule Podcasters and on Twitter at Hyrule Podcaster.
As always, this episode was produced by Patrick, and we'd like to thank Lieutenant Headtrip for composing original music for the podcast, including our theme song.
Additionally, if you'd like to directly support us, you can head over to our Patreon page. Patreons get early access to episodes and more. Links to everything can be found in the show notes.
And be sure to rate and review us in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen.
Conduit Media.